hero from Horatio Alger, if Alger's heroes had not all been white. In the years after his Olympic victories, his achievements in Berlin had been overshadowed by World War II. But by 1955, at the end of the first decade of the Cold War, he was finally getting his due. He was in demand as a banquet speaker and making good money because he had become useful to industry and government as a symbol of the opportunities America promised and sometimes delivered. To the delight of white America and most of black America, he disputed the sentiments of Paul Robeson, the All-American football player turned actor-singer who famously suggested that African Americans would not and should not fight for the United States in the event of war with the Soviet Union. Owens, in contrast, held himself out as an example of what black Americans could achieve despite the indignities and slights he had suffered his entire life. He agreed with Jackie Robinson, who in his 1949 testimony before the House Un-American Activities Committee had said that blacks had too much invested in the American experiment to support its enemies. Just a few days after his appearance on Person to Person, Owens was to embark, at the behest of the State Department, on a goodwill tour of Singapore, Malaya, the Philippines, and India. As A.M. Rosenthal, then the New York Times correspondent in South Asia, put it, Owens' mission was to make friends for the United States. Having fought the fascists with his fleetness of foot, he would now fight the communists with his charm and rhetoric, even though some Indian writers, unversed in the annals of the Olympics, confused him with Sir Owen Dixon, an Australian judge and United Nations mediator. Before the long ride to the subcontinent, though, there was the interview with Murrow, whose fondness for bespoke tailoring matched his own. Finally, at 9:30, with a cigarette clenched in his left hand, Murrow began the interview. Jesse Owens, he said, is generally recognized as the greatest track star of the last half-century. His performance in Berlin stands unmatched in modern times. Statistics will never indicate Adolf Hitler's reaction as he watched a 23-year-old boy from Danville, Alabama, run the athletes of the master race right into the ground. Owens, whose politeness was among his defining characteristics, declined to correct Murrow by pointing out that he had been 22, not 23, and was from Oakville, Alabama, not Danville. He simply smiled and waited for the questions he knew were coming, the questions that always came. After several minutes of amiable chatter, "You look to be in almost good enough condition to get out your old track shoes again," and the introduction of Owens's wife and 3 pretty daughters, Murrow offered him the opportunity to talk about the games of the 11th Olympiad. "Jesse Owens," he said, "what's your warmest memory of that August of 1936? Owens had been asked this question, or its variants, perhaps hundreds of times. He did not hesitate. "I remember a boy," he said, his accent betraying no hint of his southern roots, "that I competed against in the broad jump. A boy with whom I built a friendship, and we corresponded for a number of years, and then the war broke out, and I didn't hear any more from him at all." Owens looked down and away from the camera. The boy he was referring to was Luz Long, the silver medalist, a pure-blooded Aryan from Leipzig, who had helped him reach the broad jump finals when he had been on the verge of disqualifying. Composing himself, Owens talked about Long's son, Kai. Owens and Kai had met in 1951, and then about winning the 100-meter dash. But he had not yet answered Murrow's question. "I think that the greatest moment that a person can have is to stand on a victory stand," he said, "far away from home, and then from the distance you can hear the strains of the Star-Spangled Banner. And then suddenly you make a left turn and you see the Stars and Stripes rising higher and higher, and the higher the Stars and Stripes rose, the louder the strains of the Star-Spangled Banner would be heard. I think that's the greatest moment of my whole athletic career." Finished, he smiled, looking slightly off camera. "Thank you very much, Jesse Owens," Murrow said, taking a deep drag. "In just a moment we'll take you for a visit with Leonard Bernstein and his wife, Felicia Montealegre." Now Owens rose from his chair and dug into his pants pockets. Unlike Murrow, he had not dared to smoke on camera. Acutely conscious of his image, it simply would not do for Jesse Owens, the great track champion, to be seen smoking on network television. Nor did he want any of the young people who idolized him to think that he condoned the use of tobacco. But now that the technicians were coiling their cables and packing their cases, he pulled out a cigarette, lit up, and inhaled. Eventually, this habit would kill him.